Hello, I think we are live. Hopefully, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ruby Tuesday 89 in March. We didn't do one last month in February because of like the holidays, because of Chinese New Year and also Federal Territory Day, I believe. Yeah, so there were a few holidays coinciding. So we just decided not to do it. I don't think the turnout will be great anyway. So yeah, hi everybody from YouTube. Yeah, we have an exciting meetup today. We got two talks. Hard to imagine we have actually two talks. Usually it's like one talk or sometimes no talk at all. But yeah, I'm very excited we have two talks. I think Tristan is watching through YouTube. So yeah, no worries. I guess we can go ahead and start. All right, keynotes. Ruby Tuesday is brought to you by Engineers NY. Thanks them for StreamYard and also KR Ruby Gate. Join our Facebook group. If you want the quick link, it's rubybrigade.my. Meetup where we post all our meetup events. I think sometimes we don't always post like on Facebook or on the Slack channel timely. But if you want to actually follow if there's a Ruby Tuesday happening or not, just go to Meetup. It's usually there, and the YouTube link to this Meetup is usually there as well. We have some code related stuff at GitHub as well. Not much recently. So yeah. Slack, I think where everybody is right now. So if you want the invite link, it's bit.ly/rubymy Slack. We also use Discord when we do code cleaning, or I think when we have like community hangouts, because it's one of the few options that has unlimited free calls. So yeah, join the Discord server as well. Yeah, so I'm Gui, everybody. Yeah, thank goodness this slide exists since Jimmy Day because I always forgot to introduce myself. And joining me today is Gui from Penang.
Hi. So yeah, I'm the co-organizer in Penang for Ruby Meetup.
All right. Let's see a few reminders as well. So yeah, we're streaming through YouTube right now. So if you comment or chat, we might highlight it and that might show up on stream. As well as a quick second reminder of our event code of conduct. So we follow the Ruby Community Conduct Guideline. For more information, you can visit the link rubylang.org/en/conduct. All right, hiring shoutouts. I think there are a lot of new job postings in Facebook. There's like so many. I think Gui, you also have one right in February as well.
Yep.
You want to talk quickly about that?
So yeah, for Ninja is hiring backend developers that uses Ruby on Rails. So we are cybersecurity startups operate in Australia, Malaysia, and Hong Kong. So yeah, so if you're interested in cybersecurity and using Ruby on Rails and fully remote, yeah, can apply. The post is in Facebook group. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw quite a few other posts as well, like GoGet and Urban Metry. I think we have some cross posting from Developer Kaki as well. Quite many. So if you're interested or at changing job or whatnot, you can do check out the Facebook group. I think there's one that's like open for relocation to Thailand as well. So yeah, definitely check out the Facebook group. Let's see. I think there was another shout out in the Slack channel as well. I think let me double check. There was a Freeletics, I believe. Yeah, Freeletics in the jobs channel in Slack as well. If you're there, do check it out. They're hiring for a Ruby on Rails developer in Germany, I believe. Okay, so that's all for hiring shout outs. So on to the first talk today, Make a Nicer Looking Blog with Action Tags and Embeds by Nasrin. Let me get Nasrin in. Hey, Nasrin, you ready?
Yeah, I'm good. Hey, everyone.
All right, take it away.
Thanks, Koi. Cool. Let me just start this. All right, cool. So, hi, my name is Nazrin, and today I'm going to be talking about how to make a nicer looking blog with action and embeds. Or in subtitles, you can see how I'm just vaguely retelling you how I made a blogging feature for a side project that I did. So first of all, who am I? I'm from Penang. I wouldn't say that's the proudest thing about me, but you know, it's just something to note. My first and current workplace is Fave. I started as a software engineer for 2 years, and now I'm associate manager for one of the teams there for a consumer team. Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a Rubyist necessarily, but it's definitely a fun language. I do like to learn many other languages, so I'm like, I don't know. I guess I prefer to see myself as jack of all trades, but Ruby has made a big impact in my life in the past, especially in the past 2 years, right? So yeah. So why do you want to make a nice looking blog post, right? So the Ruby on Rails, what's the word? Make a blog. Right? So I thought, okay, why don't you just spice it a little bit and make it a little bit cool, a little bit more fun. So what do you want to make it? Maybe you want to relive the days of having Blogspot. I don't know why. People seem to have forgotten about Blogspot already, so I don't know why you'd want to do that to yourself. Maybe whoever's paying you wants to have their blog link nicer and have more interesting content than just text. In my situation, or if you don't, and post all about your exploits with just plain text, a la Barney Stinson. No one reads it in the end. And whatever it is, just sign up for Medium because it's 2022. So please, no more blogs. Okay, so what is action text? It brings rich text content and editing using this tricks editor in Rails, right? And it's built in, right? You don't really have to. It's built into Rails, so you don't have to depend on third parties or whatever to make sure that it's up to date, right? And it's customizable, so you can really just build it. To an extent, you can build your own functions. I've not explored much. I've only done one customizable function, and that's the embeds, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today. And how does it work? Well, it just takes these two lines to get it going, right? In a nutshell, right? Of course, you have to do the whole Rails install / Rails install action text or whatever, but essentially, once you've done that, this is basically all you need to get going. So let's say I have a blog post. In this case, I just call my class post, and it's got this rich text called body. Now this rich text thing, now this body attribute, it's not column in or your specific model. Rather, this is going to be saved to some model that Rails auto generates once you install action text. So yeah. Typically, people call the call content, although I went with body. Can really go either way, but typically just go with content. I now realize that bodies kind of super because they have a keyword. They have a keyword function which is body. So whenever I call the function on the body, it's body.body, which is really stupid, and I regret it to this day. Yeah. And so if you want to include it in your view, all you really have to do here is call the Rails form and then just call rich text area on body. And if you're using and if you want to add some styling to it, of course, I just use Bootstrap. Do the usual class form control whatever to make everything everything's in line. Okay. Now what about embeds, right? So action text actually supports drop-in for images, video. You don't really have to do much on that side, apart from some HTML sanitization, which you just add in an initializer. You just send it, and then from there, it's pretty easy to just drop in JPEGs and other like GIFs and whatever, and PDFs as well. So pretty simple. But for things like YouTube and Spotify and even SoundCloud, you have to. This is where the customized function comes in, right? So you can make your blog feel like Friendster or Yahoo again. Oops, this is Yahoo might get mad at me because I misspelled Yahoo. Yeah, so this is where it comes in. Okay. So customizing your tricks editor to support embeds, right? So a few disclaimers. I'm assuming you've already installed action text here. Most of this I implemented it quite a long time ago, so there's gaps in my memory. And obviously, I'm assuming you use Rails 6 and above for this. Right, so step one here is to install Stimulus.js. Now, this Stimulus.js is important because we want to add, because we need this to actually add the HTML / the JavaScript that we need to append to our function. So if you go back here, sorry, you can see all these here. Yeah, we're going to add basically one button to this. That's going to be able to give us the embedding feature. So let's go back. This is like going to be the part where it's going to be like a university lecture. So this might be a bit bland, but just bear with me, please. So of course, just run yarn install stimulus, and let yarn do its thing. And then once you've done that, under app JavaScript controllers, all you have to do is create an index.js file, which holds this specific starter code, right? It's literally just to let you kind of auto load all the controllers, all the JavaScript controllers that you might write in the future, right? So that's easy and taken care of for you. And then all you have to do then is just import controllers in your application.js, right? And I've added this link here for more information on how to get started with Stimulus.js. It's a blog. It's someone's Medium post. So yeah. And next up, so I created this. You have to create this embed class. Actually, before I move forward, just another disclaimer. A lot of this I actually learned from a subscription to, I can't remember if it was Drifting Ruby or Go Rails. So of course that's behind a paywall. So essentially you guys are getting this information for free. Yeah. I hope you guys use it for good things or bad things. It doesn't matter what you want to do with it. Just do what you ever want with it. So you have this embed class here. Now we're not going to be saving these instances to the DB. So we want to include all the active model stuff that's important to us. So in this case, it's active model, model attributes, global ID, and we want it to be, of course, an attachable in-action text, right? So ignore these for the moment and just focus on like this attribute ID and then this self method here, right? That's kind of what we need for now, as well as these sources, right? So next, step 3, we have to go and create a Rails controller and a view for the embeds, right? So pretty simple, your standard JSON controller. You create a patch method, which returns a JSON with all the content here, right? So here, what's happening is we're creating a new embed instance, and essentially what we're having it, and this is going to come useful in the future, actually is the what's the word? Is actually the link to that YouTube or like YouTube or SoundCloud or even Spotify content that you want to put into your blog post, right? And then, of course, for the content itself, we have to go and render it using application controller, and we pass it this view here. So then we can use iframes to embed the YouTube or whatever it is. As you can see here, like I've got a few options: is video, right, or a Spotify album or playlist, or SoundCloud, or just even the track or a single SoundCloud track. And then miscellaneous for everything else, really. Yeah. And then essentially, you have to also make sure that you sanitize the iframe. Of course, there's other things that, other features like video source audio that you might have later, might add later to your blog post, also need to be added with the whitelist sanitizer as well. Yeah. So moving on, step 4, if I'm moving a bit too fast, maybe someone can just let me know in the comments. But so far it seems everyone's okay. Cool. All right. So step 4. Next, you have to create the stimulus controller for adding the embeds. Right. So the stimulus controller is basically just a JavaScript controller, and it's gonna contain all the functions that you need for the embed button, essentially. Right. So under add controllers, you create your stimulus controller and you name it something obvious, because you have to physically call it later. Well, not physically call it, but you have to call it in your view later on. So in the controller, I think this is this will be standard for like all your tricks and your customizable tricks functions, basically. So you import controller from stimulus, you import trick stuff from tricks, and of course Rails. And this is like just the standard way you create a controller. And inside that controller, you have to have this. You always have this connect function. It's basically gonna when the when the controller is called, this is basically what it connects to, essentially. And then you have all these functions down here, which we will get into detail. Right. So I don't want to be too focused on these, because these are like they're really HTMLs with JavaScript. I mean, it basically just feels like reading jQuery. Yeah. So you're just adding a tricks button here. You've got the button HTML, and then what this is doing here is this element. Oops, sorry. Is basically referring to it's basically going to be referring to the HTML of the rich text area itself. So yeah, it's getting the tricks editor. It's calling the toolbar element, and then it's getting this group of buttons that I showed you just now before, and it's inserting that into that button group at the end there. And this is the tricks dialog, and essentially this is like what's gonna pop up once you click on that button. And so you can input your URL, as you can see here. It's just an input. It's an add button that's going to be called later. I'm going through this quite fast because, number one, essentially when I did do the quick course on, I think it was Drifting Ruby, basically copy pasted all the code because I mean that's basically what I needed, right? I just needed this embed feature and to add it to my own project, basically. So yeah, this is gonna make a whole dialogue just to add that add that embed to the post. And of course you have event listeners for media button. Not going to go into this in detail. And then you have an event listener for the add button. And this is actually where that embeds patch method comes in handy, because Rails is going to do an AJAX and get that, and essentially get that content and then return the, let me go back, sorry. Yeah, it's essentially going to get this. It's going to get the content, which is the basically the HTML, right, of the YouTube iframe, and then of course it's going to get the SGID of that embed itself, right? So we can actually add it properly to our post, right? Yeah, and then essentially what happens is you call the API, you get back the content, and then you just make an attachment. And then this is where we call the tricks library as an attachment, and just insert it as you want. Of course, this is all like customizable, so just do whatever you want really with it, essentially. Okay, and then in the end, actually, all you have to do really is in the line that's for the form rich text area, at the end you just add data, and then in the colons, sorry, in the brackets. Just call the controller that you named, which is in this case tricks embed, not with I don't really understand why you call it with a hyphen and not a underscore, but that's kind of just how it works, really. I've not actually explored very deeply into why they do this, although I think that's too esoteric and too small a reason to research something. So yeah. So thank you for listening. That probably was a little bit chaotic. I know my speaking style is a bit chaotic. Yeah. I'll probably work on that in the future. But yeah, thank you for listening. And if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is Pangeran Nazrin. You can just refer to me personally as Naz, and my GitHub is Naz is a Git. So yeah, that's all for me. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Nazrin. Yeah, are you all right taking questions? You can ask if there's any questions.
Yeah, I'm cool with taking questions. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, if anybody has any questions on what Nazrin did with adding embeds to the tricks editor, yeah, feel free to ask away.
In fact, if anyone wants to actually see just a quick demo of it, of how it actually works, I can actually show it right here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Okay, cool. Let me just share my screen again. Cool. All right. So you can see my screen. Awesome. Cool. So basically, this is the default tricks editor, right? So as you can see, these are all the buttons you have, and I have no embedding feature here, right? This is sorry. So so you can add files and whatever, and you can add links, right? You can make a link, but they don't actually show up as like as an embed. Basically, it's literally just a link, right? So I'm just going to show it. I'm just going to uncomment the code here, which not uncomment, but I'm going to just revert the code that I changed here, and I'm going to call the tricks embed controller, and I'm just going to save that, reload quickly, and then now you see that I have this media button here. So let's say I want to add. So I just paste the URL. In this case, I'm going to paste this mukbang video. I don't know how many of you like mukbangs, but yeah. And then we just click on add, and that's it. It shows up right there on the blog post, and I could, well, from here I can just save the draft really. So let me see. Let me just type, save that, and that's it really. Yeah, it's saved, and it's what's the word? Anyway, yeah, that's how it works. Thank you.
Nice. Thanks for the demo. We have a question about, is it something like CK editor? Are you familiar with that?
CK editor. You know, I was actually doing some small research, right? I was like wondering, like, what's the big difference between MDE, like simple MDE, and tricks, right? And I did come across this CK editor. I mean, I was only looking at it briefly. I don't really recall what's the big similarities, actually. But I suppose that they are different. I'm actually just looking at I'm actually just looking at it right now, and they seem very, very similar. However, I think the big difference here is that Trix is like built by Basecamp, so it's just made for Rails essentially. So you can't necessarily go wrong there. Yeah. So. Yeah,
Cool.
but actually, yeah, I don't really know much about the CK editor.
Gui, is there something on that?
Does it require stimulus to work, or it can work with Vue and React?
Right. So the Tricks editor itself doesn't need stimulus. However, if you want to make customized functions that add on top of it, then you have to include stimulus. At least for the feature that I made, I needed stimulus, right? But I'm not sure about any other features. I want to assume it's the same, right? Because it's essentially you're using JavaScript in this case. It's not Rails. So
Okay.
and Gui, you're also from Penang. Which part of Penang actually? I want to ask.
Yeah, I'm in BM, not on the island.
Oh, you're in BM. Okay. Cool. All right, I live on the island. Okay, cool, nice.
Right. I don't seem to see you be getting any questions. So I guess maybe we could call it a wrap. Thanks, Nasrin, so much for sharing and demoing as well. I think that demo really solidified everything you talked about. So yeah, thanks so much.
No
For
problem.
joining
No
us, Nasrin.
problem. Thanks so much. I'm gonna have to leave now. Actually, I've got to rush for a dinner appointment, dinner arrangement. So yeah.
Right, no worries.
Have a good night, man. See you guys
Right.
later.
Cool. I'll see you around, Nasrin.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. All right, so that was Make a Nicer Looking Blog with Action Tags and Embeds by Nasrin. So we have the second talk, hold on, screen froze, which is Upgrading Faith to Rails 5 by Azwan. Let me add Azwan in. Hey, Azwan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. Do you have any slides to share or is just purely story time?
No lah, got slides lah. Wait, how to share? I can share screen, right?
Yes. I think you will see a share button below.
Yeah. Wait, it says it's sharing.
Oh, it's gone already.
Oh, you guys can see it just now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not added yet, but once you like settle, then I'll add it in the stream.
See it? Not yet.
We see it, but you're sharing the StreamYard tab though.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah. That's your slides, I guess.
Yep.
Right. So I guess take it away, Azwan.
All right. Okay. Hello guys. So me and Nazrin from Faith lah basically. But we didn't plan for this. I didn't know that he's gonna talk this time as well. So we're both from Faith. But I've been there longer lah. He's been there for like not that long compared to me lah, I guess. So just a bit from me. So my name is Azwan, but people usually call me Tok Wan lah. So that's also another nickname that people have been calling me for years now. So I've been developing Rails since 2015, I think. So it's almost like 7 years plus, I guess. And then I joined Faith for almost 5 years. So I guess in startup world, 5 years is forever, right? It's quite long, I guess. So yeah, so what I'm gonna share today is about how we upgrade Faith app. Basically upgrade the Rails version, basically. So just some stats, right? So Rails, so we have around 50,000 commits now, I guess. And we started with Rails 4.2.0. And then some infra stuff, like we hosted in AWS, GitHub. For CI, we're using Drone. And then our search engine is powered by Elasticsearch. So just some, I guess, standard stuff, right? And then this is what DHH, like I always say things like this, right? Majestic monolith, right? So that's kind of like what we have at Faith as well. So basically, we have I wouldn't really call it services, but in Faith, if you go to like myfaith.com, so that one is a PWA app, right? So it's not really Rails. You can inspect all the stuff there, right? But you can think of it as a client. But in the end, it's still just a client similar to like our iOS and Android apps, and it's communicating with our main app, which is the Rails app. So the Rails app is the core of our product, basically, right? So the initial discussion, right, to start the Rails upgrade, so it started by one of our colleagues back then, Rizal. So it started around July 20th July 2018, right? And then 3 years, 3 months, and 14 days later, then only we managed to complete the upgrade, right? So that's a very long time, right? So even for us, when we finished the project, we were like, we started this conversation back in 2018. So we didn't expect that it's been that long. But in the end, we made it, right? So what I'm going to share now is more like what we've learned and things that we did so far, right? So I think first thing first, right? So one of the reasons why we need to upgrade is that, so the official support already ended, right, for Rails 4.2. So right now, if there's any security issue, I think it's quite common as well, right? You can say that most app, they don't really on the latest Rails version, right? So what happened is that when the official support ended, whenever there's a new security issue, the official version will be supported, right? But those that already ended, what we have to do is that we have to manage the patch ourselves. So it's not really a big issue, really, if you know how to do it, because like I said, right, lots of people haven't upgraded to the latest version or whatever, right? So you should be able to find help easily on how to patch your Rails version, right? Just that the issue here is that we're not secure by default. So that's kind of like not really nice, because by default, we want it to be easy, right? We don't want to think about security. We want it to be secure by default, right? And then another thing is that Rails, the new Rails version, I think Rails always have this pattern where the newer version of it always deprecate certain gems, right? Like one thing is that paperclip for upgrading for uploading files and stuff. The latest Rails version, you don't really need the gem anymore. It's built in already, right? So similarly here, right? So we are missing some new features if we don't upgrade, right? Like when we upgrade, like Rails 5.0, they introduced the action cable, the new framework for WebSockets, right? And then we also have some, what you call it, performance feature, right? In batches, so we can process multiple records better. And the key here is that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So without this, right, we can still use some gems to help with the performance and everything, but less gem better, right? And then lastly, I think as a developer, this one is quite straightforward, right? We always want to work with the latest tech. So latest is very subjective, right? But so right now Rails is like Rails 7 already, but you don't want your team to work with Rails 3, for example, right? Or Rails 4. How many years ago was that, right? Like if you try to search or you try to Google, like everyone is using some fancy stuff and we're still using the old one, right? So it's not, I mean, from work point of view, there's no issue with that, right? But upgrading to the latest one, following the trend. I think that's can keep us motivated, right? And second thing I mentioned that it's gonna attract new developers, but it also help us to retain current developer as well, right? Like so yeah, developer happiness is definitely a good point as well. So lessons so far, right? What we've learned so far about our whole journey so far, right? So this is like one of my things that I don't really like, right? Gems, right? Gems everywhere. So what I mean by this, right? So you can run this bundle stats command. I mean, you just install this gem. Again, right? You have to install the gem. So, and then you can run this, and then we can see that how many gems that we declared, and then how many. So there's a difference here, right? So let's say in this case, right, we declared around 230 gems, but let's say for just for example, right, Facebook auth or Google auth, right? So those are 2 gems, right? But they also depends on auth library itself, another gem, right? So that means that instead of adding 2, you actually adding 3 gems there. So similar, so that's what's happening here, right? Whenever we add 1 new gem, that gem itself might be using multiple gems that we're not aware of, right? So in the end, by right, we are actually using like almost 500 gems. So I think for people who are not aware of the context, people might be asking, like, this is a lot, like why do we have this and stuff, right? But like I mentioned just now, fifth, like I think we've been using Rails since quite a while already, right? People come and go. So someone might add this gem and then they leave, right? And then someone else might add this and then they leave. No one maintain it. So all those kind of stuff happens, right? So it might just be one, but it adds up, right? Over the years now, suddenly like we have too much already. So that's my second point, right? Which is upgrading gem is hard. So some of the gems, right, is no longer being maintained. Like last updated was like 3-4 years ago. But the thing is that we're still using it in our code base, right? It's still working. So that's the issue there, right? It's still working, but it's no longer being maintained. When it's no longer being maintained, right, it means that it might not, by default, it might not support Rails 5, right? Even though it's still working, right? So we need to do something there. Sometimes they are maintained gem, but like I mentioned just now, they are dependency, right? Before you can, like in that case just now, before you can upgrade the Google auth, you have to make sure that the auth gem itself is upgradable to Rails 5, right? So you need to maintain multiple gems. Actually, it's not just one. So the dependency hell is hard to maintain, basically, and it's worse when there are no tests written for it, right? When I say no test written for it, it means that no automation, right? We don't have any RSpec written for it. Testing manually by clicking or doing the app, that one doesn't count. I mean, we can test that, but that's not how we do it usually, right? And then another thing that happens, right, is about fork. There's too many fork here. So personally, I don't really like fork. So fork, what happens is that, so let's say we use, like in this case, right, I'm just going to use the Google example again, the Google auth just now, right? So let's say it works, right? But suddenly there are some certain flow that we want to add, but it doesn't work, right? So what we do, one of the decision back then is that we fork the gem to our own repo. We make the code changes there directly, and then we use that our version of the fork instead of the main repo, right? So there's no issue there, right? Because it's working. It's still Google auth, right? But what happens is that give it another few months or 1 year, right? The Google auth, they have new updates every day, every week, every month, right? So they have more commits there. But the fork that we are maintaining, right, we are not really maintaining it, right? So when it comes to upgrades, right, that's when we realize that our fork is actually like 1 year behind. And how do you want to cram the whole 1 year changes to our own fork, right? We need to do lots of testing now. We have to make sure that things doesn't break. And that's just one fork, right? Imagine like if you have multiple fork, it's a bit confusing, it's a bit hard because like I mentioned just now, the fork is not made by you. So you might not know why we need to fork in the first place. Like if you change this, what's gonna break? Like is it okay or not, right? Is it or is it that we don't need this fork anymore? So it's a bit tricky there, basically, right? So I mentioned that, right? Two options, right? Instead of forking, what you want to do probably is you want to create a pull request, try to nudge the original repo maintainers, like can you add this feature to the gem, and then use some flags or whatever so that we can use it, right? So that way it's in the main repo, right? It's in the main, and then we also like, it's a good contribution to open source as well, right? Because in a way, right, the reason why we fork is that we think that our use cases is unique, right? Is that something that we face this issue, others don't face it, so that's why we fork, right? Because our flow is unique. But more than often, right, we're not that unique. People have the same problem as well. So instead of try to solve it only for us, try to think about how can we solve this for others as well. How can we make this more generic so that it's useful for others as well, right? So that's kind of like one way to think about it. Another option is that I write this as a controversial because it's a monkey patch. So instead of fork it, you just monkey patch whatever that's missing in our own repo. So I prefer this one. It's just, so monkey patch is a double-edged sword, right? So it can be good, it can be bad, right? But similarly to any other code, right? It can be good or it can be bad. It's just easier if we monkey patch because it's part of our code base now, right? So we know what are we changing, specific code that we want to monkey patch, right? Rather than you fork the whole repo, but you only change some part of it, and then you don't even update the gem anymore. So monkey patch is also one solution that we can consider, basically, right? So yeah, fork is one of the issue that we face as well. And lastly, less is better. Like I mentioned, the bundle stat just now, 451 gems, right? So during the upgrades, right, we try to upgrade, but sometimes what we did is that, do we even need this gem in the first place? So when that happens, right, so we try to think about it that way first, right? Do we need it or not, right? If we do need it, and if you look at the code, it's just a small thing, what we do is that we just totally remove it. We can just either write some extension ourselves or something, right? Because sometimes it's just a small changes. You don't need a whole gem for the solution, right? It's just a few lines of code sometimes, right? So try not to use gem too much. That's the idea, right? So in this case, some cases we don't even consider to upgrade. We just totally remove the dependency. So less is better. So I really iterate this to the team as well. It's like whenever you need to add a new gem, just keep asking yourself, like, do you really need this gem? Because the gem itself has dependency, and the dependency also have another dependency, right? So it's a rabbit hole. We're making ourselves we're making it hard for ourselves to the team as well, right? So yeah, ideally, less is better. Less jam is a lot better. And then also, right, if you notice, right, like I mentioned just now, it took us like three years plus, right, to upgrade the gem. So this is also one of the issue about us as engineers, right? Because so Faith is a product based, right? So we have our own product, we focus on our own product, we build our own product, right? And when that happens, right, and then we want to upgrade real, right? The upgrade is gonna come from engineers, right? Product manager, they're not aware of the technical aspect of it, right? So it's up to us as engineers to convince them that this upgrade is necessary, not something that we're doing for fun, right? It's fun, yes, but it's also necessary, right? And one of the issues is that sometimes we think, I made a joke, say something like, when you're thinking about talking to product manager, right? Try to explain why do we need to upgrade this and make sure that they understand it, right? In simple, plain English. It's like if your grandma cannot understand it, make it simpler, right? Talk less technical, like the second points, right? Sometimes it's just about the security updates, new feature as well, right? Security update alone is big, right? You don't want your apps to be easily hacked or not secure by default, right? Those issues, right? So the first thing that's really important here is that we as engineer tend to complicate stuff and we don't explain it simple enough, and the non-technical people might think that this is just a fun project rather than a priority or something that's really needed, right? And so that's what I want to bring. I want to highlight this issue, right? And the issue here is that you don't have to do this yourself, right? It's a team effort, right? Some people know how to talk better. I mean, so just collaborate with that other engineers as well on how to explain this, how to do this, right? You don't have to do everything yourself. And on the last part, if you notice in the earlier slides, we created a GitHub issue to discuss the upgrades and everything, right? But for Faith, we are using Jira to manage all the product backlog, all the bugs and everything, right? So instead of creating a GitHub issue, I propose to create Jira tickets with proper product planning. So instead of thinking of it as a technical upgrades, we make this as a proper product planning project. Like we follow all the requirements, all the checklists, right? So that way, it's simple enough so that other product manager can see it, they can understand it in plain English as well. Like if you give them a GitHub issue, it's like this is all technical guys are talking, so they won't understand anything, right? So we create Jira ticket, we treat this as a normal product planning. It's just another technical upgrade, but it can be a product planning as well, right? And then it's not just about the product manager. It's easier for other engineers to just go and see, okay, what are we going to do with this upgrades, right? So that way, it's easier for everyone to refer to the same thing, right? Because GitHub is a bit too technical. It's okay for technical stuff, right? But when it comes to team collaboration, sometimes GitHub is not really the best place for us, like, at least as a team, right? Because for us, we're using Jira. So this is also another things that I noticed, things that we learn, right, during the journey. So when we hire people, right, we want to hire smart people to help us in our journey, right, to build the product, the team, the engineering team, right. So by that definition, we are surrounded by smart people, right? And the thing is that what I notice, right? I always notice, right? People do want to help, but they don't know where to start. And what I did back then was that, so I made my presentation and say like, okay, we want to upgrade this, blah blah blah, all the pro and cons and everything, right? And then I said something like, okay, if you guys want to help, just PM me. We can discuss on how to split the task, right? So that's what I said back then. But give it like a few weeks, few months, what I noticed is that it's a bit odd because no one really messaged me. And so it's a bit different, right? Because I get the vibe that people want to help, but no one's really talking to me, right? So this is also what I noticed, right? And then I was like, maybe I need to change my approach for a bit, because sometimes even for me, right, if I have to talk to someone, that's already a blocker for me. So sometimes you want to help, right? But if I can help without talking, it's like that's better, right? I think it's just engineers or some people, they just introvert. They don't really want to talk. They want to help, right? But they don't want to talk too much. They just want to help right away, right? So what I did back then was that instead of, so what I did that helps a lot, right? So I did this instead. So I created a list, right? It's like, okay, we have all these folders and stuff, right? So I said, okay, I'm gonna take, let's say in this one, right? I'm gonna take controllers. So all the RSpec in controllers, I will fix it. And then we still have a few other, lots of other folders, right? We haven't fixed. So, and these are the folders that you can help for the Rails upgrade, right? Once I did this, right, within few weeks, all the tests are fixed just by having this list, right? And like I mentioned just now, no one even PM me to talk about how to help even, right? They just comment here, I'm gonna take this, and that's it. That's all the conversation is, right? I don't even need to onboard them because I mentioned just now, we all smart people, right? They know how to help. Basically have a checklist and all that. So this is one of the things that really helps, right? So I make it easy for them to help the upgrade, right? So they don't have, so ideally they don't have to talk to another human. That's better lah. Have a checklist, have a proper onboarding process. So basically they just see this and then they just put their names there, and then the next few days it's fixed already. It was quite a good experience for me as well, right? I didn't know, like, just having this, it helps the team a lot. So this is why I say, like, help others to help you. Just make a checklist or make it simpler so that others can help you easier lah. So yeah. So another thing that we do, right, is that when we're thinking about Rails upgrade, right, what we're doing is that we're using the dual boot option, the dual boot approach, right, which is quite common. So what you can, so in simple words, in simple setup, right? So what you usually do is that you put a command, something like Rails server, and then it will run the Rails server, right? So what you can do is that if you run Rails server, it's gonna run a normal Rails server. But if you run next Rails server, it's gonna run the next version of the Rails server, right? So by doing that, our code base can run on both Rails 5.2 and 5.0, 4.2 and 5.0. So that's the idea of dual boot, right? And it's really helpful because it's easy to set up. So because by default we have both Rails version. We just need to run different command, right? And to do this, right, you need to have a really good enough test coverage. In our case, our test coverage is around 70%. So it's more than enough for us. So it's not perfect, right? Of course, we want to be higher, but so far 70% is really good enough. Most of our test cases are covered, right? So usually the process that we did back then is that we make sure that the CI passed. So what we did is that, right, when you create a pull request, so you made some code changes, you push to GitHub, you create a pull request, right? Once you create a pull request, we are using drone CI. It's just any CI, right? What it will do is that it will run 2 versions of the Rails. So what it's going to do is that it's going to run a full complete aspect for Rails 4.2, and then at the same time it's going to run for Rails 5.0 as well. Meaning that, so let's say if we have like 1,000 test cases, right? It means that 1,000 test cases for Rails 4.2, another 1,000 test cases gonna be run for 5.0. So it's gonna be double the work, basically, right, for CI. Once that one is completed, we do regression test. Regression test is where we do end-to-end testing from our mobile app. So it's not just about the Rails app. It's about how other apps interact with the Rails app, like our mobile apps, our web app, so all together, right? And during the regression test, right, this is where also we start to find more bugs or cases where CI doesn't cover, right? And what we notice is that all the UI, not all the UI changes, but most of the test cases that we didn't cover, mostly related to UI changes or capybara test, basically, which is quite funny, because I think most people likes to work more with the API stuff. So when they see the UI stuff, they'll be like, yeah, it's like, you're not a front-end developer, so it's probably just a UI change, right? So you don't do too much testing there. But turns out those cases, because of that attitude or that mentality, things start to break there, right? And then the last part, right? Because of the dual boot approach that we do, so instead of 1,000, now we have 2,000 test cases running, right? So I noticed that, right? And at that time, I noticed also that our test cases took around 20 to 30 minutes to complete, meaning that's a pretty long time, right? So what I did also during that period is to improve the CI speed itself. So we use a Knapsack Pro. It's a gem for this. But I think in short, it's just that instead of running tests in single machine, we distribute the test into multiple machine. So we speed up the test process a lot, basically. So instead of from 20 to 30 minutes, now everything is done within 10 minutes. If we add more machines, it can go down more, basically, but we still gonna have we have to pay more. So far 10 minutes seems okay at that time. And doing this helps a lot as well, because if we don't do this upgrade, right, if we don't improve these steps, right, it means that whenever we make changes, suddenly all our CI is slower than before, right? So if there's any failure, you're only going to notice it after 30 minutes later, which is, it sucks now, right? You have to wait 30 minutes before you know that your test is failing, right? So having 10 minutes, 10 minutes is okay, right? It's not too long. So it's not too short as well, but it's not too long, right? So it's a faster feedback loop. So it's easier for developers to test, to do all these changes, right? So it's not really part of the Rails upgrade itself, but we need these tools to be efficient, right? Because otherwise, the developer is not going to be happy with it. I mean, I'm not happy with it also, right? We don't want things to be slower just because we have to do something, right? And also, I think last thing is that we don't really have much experience here, right? When they created that issue back then, I think I'm not sure I joined yet or not. So around 2018, right? It's a typical startup world, right? A bunch of young, inexperienced people, but lost with loss of passion, right? But yeah, it's just that we never done any big scale upgrade before. That's it, right? It's not that we're not good at it. We just that we lack experience, right? We just like the experience. That's it, lah. And sometimes we just think that Rails is just a gem, right? So it just literally it's just one gem in the gem file, right? How hard can it be, right? Apparently, upgrading Rails gem is hard, right? So I think we underestimate the effort to do this, right? And then we don't really have any specific plan. So what we're thinking was like, I think there was also a time where we created one pull request. We start to do the upgrades there, right? But the problem there with that approach is that we have multiple teams, right? Every single day we keep adding more features, right? So that pull request keep growing bigger. In the end, it's too big to be reviewed. It's too big to be merged and deployed. It's too risky, right? So we scratch that approach basically. And then we also we don't have any specific timeline of flow, which is quite important, right? If we don't have any timeline in this case, right, that's where it get dragged to 3 years, right? Because we just chill. Yeah, it's like we have some free time. Okay, we do this, right? Yeah, when we don't have a goal, then we become like this now, right? We becoming too relaxed, and then we just keep delaying the upgrades. And then the number 5 is similar to the third one I mentioned just now. So we tried to think whether should we just update slowly, right, bit by bit, or should we just stop everything and just do one big upgrade project, right? So the one big upgrade project, we thought about that, we discussed about that. In the end, it's too risky and probably will not work. But yeah, in the end, we didn't go with that approach because it's a bit risky, right? Because if you pause everything, right, you can't really pause everything because products need to go, right? And needs to be built. And if there's any issue on production, you cannot just say, okay, we don't want to fix these bugs. We want to focus on Rails upgrade, right? That doesn't make sense, right? If you fix this bug and then suddenly your Rails project is affected somehow. So that's why it's like one big project is too risky. What we did in the end is that we upgrade incrementally, slowly, but it's a lot smoother, basically. So from all those experiences that I shared just now, right? So this is our current plan for Rails upgrade. First thing is that we have to set up dual boot. So we have both installation, either using Docker or you install all the Elasticsearch on your local machine yourself, right? So we need to have this. This part is important because without this part, right, all the engineers doesn't know how to run the dual boot. We don't want them to do this themselves. We make it easier for them to run dual boot so that they can just run it at any time, right? So that's the idea of the first step. Second thing is that, so you want to run dual boot CI as well, like I said just now, run for the current Rails version and then run for the next Rails version. And then make sure all the tests in CI pass. And then the fourth option is that we need to run the regression test. This is like a full regression test from all of the components that's gonna touch the API or the main app, right? And then also because we know that some So admin tool is one of our internal tools, but so what I'm trying to say here is that higher test coverage not on admin tools, but for UI changes. When I say UI changes, it can be the internal tools. It can be a web view as well. We have some web view as well. Yeah, so any UI changes, we try to put more manual tests there so that we can find more bugs there, right? And then the fifth step is that we have multiple. It's more like a development server basically. The fifth step is that all those server is gonna be running. It's gonna run on the next Rails version. So that way, because each team use features differently, right? So when we do this, right, during this process, some team might discover, okay, there's a bug, but only for their team, right? Because only they use this specific feature, right? And so far, doing this approach helps a lot, right? We don't really discover any big issue that we cannot solve during this period. But it's really helpful. It's just because each team use different feature differently, right? So once we discover that, we just add more aspect as well to make sure that no regression there. And the last part is that we run Canary Release on production. We don't want to do like 100%, like we deploy and then run Rails 5 right away, right? So that's way too risky as well. So we run Canary Release. So Canary Release means here is that what it means here is that instead of release 100% in one go, in one deployment, we go 10%, and then we monitor. If there's no issue, we run 20%, 40%, 50%. Usually, after you get to 50%, we just go to 100% because 50% usually means it's big enough, right? So this one is up to the team, up to you guys. But that's how we go it. So we don't want to release everything in one go. Canary Release on production is very crucial to this upgrade as well. So this current plan is what these are the steps that we do for now. And moving forward, this is kind of like this is our new default, right? Incremental update, which means that update the gems. We run the CI bit by bit, make sure that all the test cases are covered, right? So we keep adding more test cases, right? So it's less sexy compared to like, okay, we do want this whole project and then we release to production, right? The whole project seems more exciting usually, but there's a lot more risk there. So incremental update, maybe less sexy, but it's really helpful to discover the bugs along the way. And then also by default, we always gonna have 2 Rails version in the app, right? So that's by default, because there's always gonna be there's always gonna be a new Rails version anyway, right? So keep the infrastructure, even though we don't want to upgrade yet. Keep the infrastructure so that we don't have to redo again the next time, right? And then the third thing is that things will always break, and that is fine, right? And like for me as well, a planned failure is still a plan, right? Don't panic. What I mean by planned failure is that it might break in production, but because we're doing Canary Release, at most it's gonna affect like 5% or 10% of our users, and then we can shut it down, right? We can go back, we can shut it down, we can shut down the Canary Release. So that's what I meant by planned failure, right? We know that it might fail, but so we reduce the risk. Instead of 100% failure, now we only release the updates to 10% of the users. Not really 10% of the users, more like 10% of the traffic anyway. So yeah, so don't panic. Make sure we have multiple backup plans. So that's why the Canary Release is really, really helpful for us. And lastly, keep removing the unnecessary gems. It's quite fun as well because you start to learn like, yeah, we actually don't need this gem. It's just a few lines of code, or we don't even need this feature in the first place, right? because it's easy to add stuff here, but I also try to think about, when you're talking about a good developer, right? It's not just about knowing what good things we can add to the repo. It's also about knowing when to remove stuff, right? When to remove the right stuff. So we need to balance both sides, right? We cannot just add stuff and then we don't remove anything at all. That's not good as well, right? So basically, so right now we in the midst of upgrading to the next real version again. Instead of 3 years, 3 months, 14 days, it took us like 2 months now just to upgrade to the next version, just by having a proper plan now, because we learn from our mistakes and everything, right? We keep the infrastructure, update slowly. So yeah, now it took us like 2 months just to make sure that all the tests are passing and everything. So it's a really big achievement for us. So yeah, shout out. We are hiring as well. So yeah, in case you guys want to join us or you just want to have a chat with us, just feel free to check out this page or just email me at any time. So has there been any notable improvement from the upgrades? I think all the duplication stuff, right? So one of the things that we tend to ignore, right, when you run your reels, right, there's a lot of warning about this is deprecated or this one might not work in the next version anymore, right? So we keep ignoring all those stuff. But when it comes to upgrade, those warnings are now errors. And it is quite important because it's deprecated for a reason. Sometimes it's because of security reason, sometimes because of performance issue. So we tend to ignore those warnings, and then warnings start to become errors now. So there's no specific improvement really, but it's good to know all those stuff because it helps. I think it helps us to become a better developer, that we are aware of what we are building rather than just add stuff. It works, right? Rather than building stuff just to make it work, now we can make it more efficient as well. Yep. Yeah, I think that's it, I guess, for me.
All right. Thanks so much, Azwan, for sharing your experience in getting Faith upgraded to Rails 5. Let me just quickly unshare your screen. Yeah, I guess once you started to talk, so I saw a lot of Faith folks pop up in the comment as well. So yeah. Gui, is there anything you'd like to add?
No.
All right. Hopefully, Rails 6 upgrade will be soon. That's one. And let's
Yeah.
pay less.
That's the plan. Like we plan to upgrade to Rails 6 soon as well.
All right, nice to hear that. Yeah, hopefully it'll be less painful
Yeah,
compared to current.
Yeah, not gonna take another 3 years for sure.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks so much for joining us, Azwan.
All right, welcome.
All right, so that was upgrading Faith to Rails 5 by Azwan. Yeah, I guess that's the end of the meetup. I think I mentioned earlier that this is a very rare occasion that we had 2 talks. So, and it's not often we get speakers. So if anybody is interested in speaking, Aiman, if you're still here, I'm calling you out. Amri as well. Anyone interested in giving talks, please do reach out to us in Slack or Facebook or anywhere. So yeah, I guess see everybody next month in April. Let me see when's the date. Most likely 5th of April, I guess. So yeah, look forward to more talks. And yeah, see everybody next month.